The corridor to the ceremonial hall smelled faintly of ozone and crushed citrus leaves, a Vulpinari custom, perfume distilled from groves that grew under violet suns. Surya Vel, daughter of the Sky Clan matriarch and heir by claw and counsel, paused at the threshold. Her white ceremonial mantle rippled around her like frost, and beneath it, dawn-orange fur shone where the fabric parted at wrist and throat. She adjusted the weight of the silver mask that framed her face, its filigrees swirling like wind tracks in snow. Her ears, tall and keen, twitched at the hushed murmur of 1,000 human candles and the softer, pulsing hum of the Starliner's gravatorium. Tail poised, she stepped into the grand hall. Stars burned behind glass walls, cold fires hung in velvet. Human banners, cobalt and gold, draped opposite pennants of the Vulpinari, white and ember red, sewn with moons. Between them stood the platform, an arc of translucent crystal, grown, not forged, like the instruments in old wind hymns. On it waited Kalen Dorn, crown prince of the Terran Concord, the man rumor named granite-blooded, storm-eyed, stoic even when the palace fell around him during the first siege of Aurelia. Surya tasted him first. Humans carried a salt-warm scent when anxious. He had the lines of a statue carved for a courtyard fountain, shoulders square under a tailored black dress coat trimmed with subtle braid, jaw clean, mouth unsmiling. He wore no sword. Humans seldom did at their weddings, but his posture read weapon anyway. His eyes, a quiet gray like rain pinned to slate, found her through the lattice glare. He inclined his head, not the Vulpinari bow of ear and tail, but a human nod that contained no mockery. Lady Surya Vel, the Concord ambassador intoned, voice amplified by the hall's songstones. Prince Kalen Dorn, we convene under star law to knock your houses and end the winter war. The words diffused into ritual. Surya stood still, but inside her bodies, plural, for fox hearts ran in pairs, were slick with frantic rhythm. Her clan had bled along cratered moons and on glassed plains. Her youngest little brother, Rays, held the northern border with 3 ships and a proverb. If this alliance failed, he would be outnumbered by sunrise. Do you accept the oath of balance? The ambassador asked. I accept. Kalen's voice carried the iron and velvet of a forged bell. He offered his hand. Warmth radiated from human skin like hearthstone. Surya pressed her paw hand to his palm, claws retracted, for prickling at the intimacy of contact. The hall exhaled. Behind them, war fleets, hers and his, orbited in leash circles like sharks politely waiting for a treaty to snap. For the Concord, he said, steady. For the clans, she returned, steady. They traded vows. The human formula differed from the wind oath of her people, but meaning braided close enough to hold. When the ambassador murmured they might seal the pact. As they willed, Kalen did not lunge, did not perform. He searched her face as if it were a star chart and made a small, visible decision. He touched his lips slightly to the edge of her mask, just where silver ended and soft fur began. Heat flashed beneath Surya's skin. Her ears flicked in surprise. The crowd rustled. 1,000 contained opinions. A Vulpinari battle elder approached the dais, his mane banded with iron rings. Prince, he said in thickly accented Terran, blood remembers. Will you remember ours? Kalen's gaze did not waver. I carry it, elder. I will not add more. The elder studied him for a long heartbeat, then angled his ears in assent. The music resumed, light and pearly. Surya breathed. The ritual ended. They were married. The fleets waited. And someone, in the shadows between pennants and crystal, was already calculating which vow would fail first. The reception unfolded on deck Aurelia, a crescent of gardens sustained by thin-air orchards and programmable rain. Damp leaves laced her nose with the green sweetness of home, but the grass underfoot was synthetic, human, efficient, too even. Surya took her place at the high table beside Kalen. Servitors drifted in silent choreography, offering dishes that glittered as much as tasted, sugar-latticed tranches from earth, skewers of emberroot glazed in pepper honey from Vulpinari hearths. Human tongues found her clan's spices like live wires, Vulpinari Aristus sipped delicate Terran champagne and blinked, scandalized by bubbles that dared to tickle a noble mouth. Kalen ate with precise economy, chewing as though cataloging the flavors for later. He positioned his chair with an unobtrusive angle that let him see both entry doors and the maintenance mezzanine. Surya noticed. The habit spoke of someone used to being hunted, or guarded, or both. A human admiral with white hair like frost at midnight approached, metals curving across his chest. "Your Highness," he said to Kalen, voice rasping. "The Concord is proud. I am Arden Vale. My son died at Tethys Gate. You were there." Silence rang. Surya's fur lifted along her spine. Tethys Gate, a battle etched into howl and human him alike. Her people called it the Night of Broken Mirrors. The debris field still shone like a shattered crown. "I was," Kalen said. He set his glass down, meeting the old man's grief without a flinch. "Your son held Longline 3 for 8 minutes longer than any model predicted. Those 8 minutes allowed Corridor South to evacuate. There are children on Aurelia who have winter birthdays because of him." Admiral Vale's throat worked. His hand trembled once, settled. "Thank you," he said, and stepped back into the crowd like a man walking away from a cliff he'd finally seen. Surya's tail swept, a slow, thoughtful curve. "You know how to answer wounds," she murmured. "I had practice," Kalen said. They endured speeches, toasts, the delicate dance of adversaries learning to pretend at friendship. Twice, Surya caught slant glances between a human envoy and a mink-furred Vulpinari broker, something fetid under the wine, a whiff of side deal. She made a note, filed by scent and posture. Peace was a meadow where snakes loved the sun. At last the ceremony sluiced into corridors, and the pair were conveyed by quiet shuttle to the neutral habitat that would be theirs, Station Meridian, a ring before a gas giant whose storms painted the dark with slow cobalt lightning. Their quarters were unostentatious by royal standards. 2 sleeping suites, a shared salon with couches soft enough to swallow a soldier's discipline, a compact kitchen humming with micro-farms and human kettles. Everything chosen to symbolize parity. Everything scrubbed of history. Kalen stopped just inside and rested his hand on the doorframe like a pilgrim touching an altar. Then he looked to her. There was no swagger of ownership in him, no assumption. Only tired dignity and an appraisal that did not feel like a weapon. "Surya," he said, "we did not choose the scaffold of this, but we can choose how we build upon it. I swore to honor you. I meant it. You decide what private means." She studied him openly now. Humans wore emotion shallow on their faces compared to fox kind, who moved truth through ear and tail and scent. Yet there, so faint even a human would miss it, hung the smell of iron fear, clean as fresh blood, not of her. Of failing. "Then we will begin with sleep," she said, masking the tremor in her voice with a royal's clarity. "And tea at dawn." "Coffee," he countered, the smallest hint of a smile finally dislodging the stone of his mouth. "Coffee smells like a burned comet. And your thunder tea smells like a flower bouquet lost in a machine shop." Her whiskers twitched. "We will endure each other's poisons." He inclined his head in mock solemnity. "It is what alliances are for." They split to separate rooms. Alone, Surya pressed her palm to the window. Lightning crawled through the gas giant's belly like luminous vines. In the reflection, her mask hung from her hand, and a stranger's married eyes looked back. Somewhere in the Armstrong belt, Reyes held a fragile line and whispered his proverb, "In winter, hold the root, not the leaf." What had she taken root in tonight? Mornings tasted like truce. Kalen's kettle hissed, the coffee's bitterness flooding the air with a dark warmth that dragged memories of human kitchens into the room. Rain at windows, cheap mugs, laughter he did not visit. Surya's thunder tea bloomed simultaneously, violet steam curling with a metallic tang as if petals had been pressed under sword steel. They sat at a round table of grown wood, elbows not quite touching, hands wrapped around heat. They did not know how to speak yet. On the 4th morning, the silence cracked. Kalen noticed the tablet open before her, Vox notes sketched in quick strokes, elegant glyphs annotated with human script. Astrobiotics? He asked. Vulpinari bioluminal symbiotes, Soraya said, surprised enough to answer honestly. We harbor light weave beneath our fur, microorganisms that braid with our nerves. When the moons go dark, we are still visible to one another. It changes how we write poetry, and how we wage war. Show me. She blinked. Most humans did not ask to be taught unless they intended to own the knowledge. Kaelin only leaned forward, interest without hunger. She swept aside her cup, pulled up hollow schematics, lattice nerve maps, biolite pulses, the way emotion translated to aurora along the back, how Vulpinari could find their lost among trees by the signature of grief alone. So you see, he gestured, groping for an analogy, a chord when I hear only a note. Her ears angled in pleased surprise. Yes. Most humans only hear themselves. He almost laughed. We are notoriously loud. Conversation found a channel. The next day, he asked about the SkyClan's moon palaces carved from salt ridges and black glass. She told him of childhood races along wind spines, her mother's lessons cut into meat and proverb. He spoke of Earth's oceans, not as numbers but smells and textures, kelp drying on piers, engines coughing diesel, gulls claiming sky like debt collectors. When he said the word home, the room changed. I have never seen a true ocean, Soraya admitted. Our seas are Finger Lakes stitched in gold land. Will you? The word stuck. Asking a human prince for something felt like putting your muzzle under the butcher's hand. I'll show you when we can, he said, as if it were ordinary, as if showing each other worlds were just a task on a list between meetings. The first event came small, a report blipping in on the work console, a border skirmish that was not. Vulpinari patrols had strayed 2 grids into Concord space chasing smugglers. Concord pilots, new and too eager, had lined up a shot. Both commanders held their leashes. Soraya exhaled. It could have tipped, she said. Kaelin's gaze skated the data plumes. It didn't. Not because of us, because of them. He tapped the names of 2 junior officers on opposite sides. Give them commendations. Quiet ones. They are not ours. They are more ours than we admit. That night he attempted human cooking. Smoke alarms, it turned out, worked aggressively on Station Meridian. They laughed like people who had not yet cried in front of each other, and ate emergency bread and Vulpinari fire fruit dipped in polite human cheese. Somewhere between flavor shock and story, Soraya realized the sound of his voice did not rub her fur the wrong way anymore. We're ridiculous, she said around the burn. We're trying, he countered, and there was pride in the word. Under the table, Soraya's tail twined once around her ankle, a comforting brother-not gesture no human would read. She had done harder things than try. She had stood on a cliff with the drums below, and sung her name to death, ready to jump. This was practice for the part of war no one trained you to love, staying when every instinct said run. Station Meridian's observation rim was a windowed ring with gravity thin enough that hair lifted and fur floated in slow tides. Soraya and Kaelin drifted there late, after authorized messages and unauthorized sighs, sharing the hush as shuttle lights stitched the dark. Do you regret it? She asked finally, words smudging the quiet. Regret contains too many variables, he said dryly, then softened. The answer you want is no. I regret the timing of my life, not this specific hinge. And I regret the scarcity of choices, she returned. But I do not regret choosing peace with you. He looked at her then as if she had peeled back a rind and offered him fruit. They were near enough that Soraya could smell the thread under his cleaned-up scent, a domestic heat, cinnamon on a stove in a house where sisters argued with wooden spoons. He had a family, then, somewhere earthward, ghosts who breathed. She wanted to ask and did not, because biting into a man's past without permission is a cruelty even wolves reserve for enemies. This will work, he said. Not a question. We will make it work, she corrected. That is different. He huffed barely a laugh. Ah. The The difference between destiny and labor. Your people love destiny. Yours love labor. You say this like we cannot share. He tilted his head, just enough for her to see the man under the prince, stubborn, tired, ferociously gentle in the places no one clapped for. I would like to share, he said. The next day cracked them open. Alarms bled straight into bone. Orange strobes cascaded through corridors. The station's voice spoke in a woman's cool tenor. Attention! Unknown vessels emerging in local space. All non-essential personnel to core shelters. Saria's fur went flat in an instant. Her bodies went from languid to ready. Kalen didn't stumble. He moved. Clothes, comms, encrypted bands snapped around his wrist. His hands were efficient. The air around him cooled. Whatever warmth his coffee had cultivated, whatever softness evenings on the rim had grown, sealed shut. Who is it? She demanded, running to keep stride. We'll know in a minute. Kalen, she said, but he was already sliding into a channel, eyes seeing something she did not. Dorn, a voice snapped in his ear. Command. We have marks. Show me. The salon wall blossomed into tactical, stars replaced by moving math. 20 signatures unfolded like teeth. Not ours, Saria breathed. Corsari Dominion, the voice confirmed. Predators with tidal fleets and a doctrine of ransom. They want bargaining chips. They're broadcasting a demand for the Vulpanari heir. Every hair along Saria's spine speared. They want me. They want leverage. Kalen corrected, cool enough to burn. He turned to her. In his face, something shuddered. He was still Kalen. But he had put on an old coat, the kind lined with thorns. Shelter, he said. Not request. Order. I do not. Your duty is there. Led them. By me stillness behind the screaming. Softer, not much. Please. There are moments you know if you refuse you break more than a command. Saria bared teeth she pretended were a smile. If you die, she said quietly, ears low, I will hunt you to whatever afterlife humans think they deserve and drag you back by your beautiful stupid hair. His mouth finally, blessedly, bent. Understood. She ran. Through corridors where panic scents curdled, past a child who had dropped a stuffed octopus, she scooped it, thrust it into tiny hands, lied with a princess's ease. We are safe. In the shelter, 300 people vibrated between terror and rumor. Saria climbed an emergency dais and let her voice go full wind singer. Listen. The station is built to bend storms, not break. You will breathe. You will eat. There will be a count after, and we will count you all. Our defenders are not fools. Are they enough? Someone spat. Saria thought of Kalen's eyes above maps. They are the kind who make enough. Behind the bulkhead, space closed its fist. The command deck breathed a different air, thiols and ozone under recycled cool, the taste of nervous electricity. Kalen stepped into it, and returned to a cadence his body remembered better than sleep. Officers pivoted. Screens cross-fed. The Corsari formation flexed like a jaw preparing to bite. Open a line, Kalen said. A face pulsed onto the main display, Corsari Admiral Raz, beads in his hair, scarring like an artist's signature across his lips, eyes gleaming with the particular joy of someone arriving late to a feast for which he hadn't paid. Human Prince, Raz sang in a voice slick with mockery. A neutral ring cannot shelter prey. Gift us the Vulpanari fox, and we will call this salvage instead of conquest. Kalen's wrists rested on the rail. He never liked touching command chairs. Sitting made him feel too close to a throne. Turn around, Admiral. I dislike repeating myself. Raz bared teeth. Your station's paltry guns make pretty sparks. We studied them. Behind him, Corsari ships, sleek, saw-edged, unfolded nets of light, lures that confused old defense arrays. We also studied your fondness for the noble gesture. Will you die for a fox? Kalen's eyelids did not flicker. He cut the line. Bring the garden offline. he told his officers. A murmur twitched through the crew. This was not in any drill. Reroute life support subgrid 17 to spinal capacitors. Unseal Meridian's keel. What keel? Someone breathed, half hysterical. The one we grew out of a retired dreadnought, Kalen said, very mild. You thought the Concorde gave ambassadors a ring without teeth? Panels irised open across the station's skin. Decorative edges uncurled into launchers. Light sculptures, resolved like insects into autonomous gun pods. Beneath garden soil, armored conduits woke from pretend death. Meridian had been a songbird these last months. Now it remembered it was a hawk hooded for the opera. Reactors? Kalen said. Primary to 80%. Secondary spooling. The garden is very dead. We'll regrow it, Kalen murmured. To the gunnery lead. We will not chase kills. Only disarms. Target their nets, thrusters, weapon throats. Orchestrate, don't brawl. The Corsari advanced. Their formation split like a card trick, 3 ships fainting high, too low, the rest pouring straight down the station's throat. He'll try to skewer the ring, Kalen said, watching Raz move. He thinks we're married to geography. Make him divorce it. Sir? Bite his flank. He snapped coordinates, his voice calm enough to slow heart rates. Fighters launched, Meridian's thin-wing gnats, skimming the edges of the Corsari nets, dropping packets that turned the lures into knots. The first salvo from the station did not thump. It sighed, a ripple of micro-guidance, missiles that talked to each other as they flew. They kissed 2 Corsari engines with the tenderness of assassins. Those ships veered, not destroyed, neutered, drifting, the bite missing half its teeth. Raz corrected with a cursed grace. He was not incompetent. When he tried to bold the ring, Kalen peeled Meridian's trajectory like fruit. Grav plots hummed. The ring shifted in her plane, magnetics catching the gas giant's field to hitch a near-impossible slide. The Corsari firing solutions went dumb. Station crew made involuntary noises, the sound a throat makes when a drop is steeper than the sign promised. Sir, they're charging a spinal lance, gunnery called. It'll gut us if... Feed Garden 17's death to the forward shields, Kalen said. And line up the Thorn. The Thorn had not existed when Meridian called herself Meridian. It was a relic reworked by quiet engineers, a rail that did indecent things to mass and intent. Kalen's jaw clenched once. He despised showing the hidden blade. But he despised funerals more. On my mark, he said. Aim not at them. At that, see it? A scrap field? The Row 3 navigator blinked. Not scrap. A listening station they seated. Mark. The Thorn spoke. No sound, just conversion. The slug slid through the scrap canopy. The listening array detonated into glitter. The glitter wasn't innocuous. It flooded the Corsari, targeting with noise. Raz, in his hole, snarled. He could still shoot, but his teeth were dulled. Meridian's second wave trimmed those teeth to nubs. Sir, Com said, bewildered. We're getting distress beacons. Corsari pods? Some are requesting quarter. Mark and fetch, Kalen said. We do not mistreat the captured. But... No buts. If you can save lives, save them. This is how we're different. For the first time in an hour he let his eyes half close. He pictured the shelter. He pictured Suriazir's angled at command tone, the angle they'd take if he did not walk back. He pictured a child gripping a stuffed octopus, breathing because one more engine went quiet instead of catastrophic. He opened his eyes and resumed cutting Raz to pieces without ending the man. The battle's end was not fireworks, it was exhaustion. Weapons warmed their way down. The gas giant's lightning continued, indifferent, a lover fighting in another room. Kalen exhaled, and the command deck exhaled with him. Casualties? He asked. Minor, they told him. A broken arm. A burn. No deaths. No deaths. He allowed himself a private sin, relief. Then start the counts, he said. Ours. Theirs. The living matter more than the dead today. In the shelter, the first cheer crashed like surf when the wall screen shifted from vectors to tally. The second cheer came quieter, a tremor rather than a roar, survivor counts scrolling under captions in both scripts. Saria did not cheer. Relief sluiced through her, yes, but something else sat in her sternum like a stone wrapped in silk. She had watched him. There was grace in the way he folded space and math, and there was a cruelty to such grace. He carved without swagger, commanded without sadism, and still he carved. The ghost stories Vulpinari pups traded in alleys did not mention mercy. They did not mention the way a human prince would risk a station to preserve enemy lives he theoretically did not owe. The shelter doors unlocked. People spilled into hallways with the wildness of laughter too sharp, sobs like bones. Saria moved slower, tail low, ears canted. She found their quarters by the smell of their new home, tea iron, coffee ash, and the thread of his skin. She sat in the dark and waited. When the door whispered open, Kalen did not stride. He entered like a man whose armor had fused to his muscles and would take hours to pry away. He paused when he saw her outline. His voice, when it came, was hoarse from too much command. "Are you hurt?" "No." "Any of ours?" "None died." He nodded once, like a man agreeing with a tenet. "Who are you?" she asked, because one of them had to say it. He leaned against the bulkhead as if he trusted it more than the couch. His eyes were not gray now, they were the color of story ash, the suspend of what burned. "Kalen," he said, and then, because she had not asked his name, he added, "Also, other things. I was raised to call them duties. Duties with nicknames," she said, cruel and kind both. "Ghost. Butcher. The Dorn line. We tell them to frighten children from staying out when the frost comes." He flinched because he was honest. "Propaganda carves us in marble no matter which banner we fight under." He exhaled. "But yes, there are battles I architected. There is a reason I did not argue when they chose a face to marry their princess. Because what war wrote in you helps keep me alive. Because what war wrote in me is useful until it kills me. I had hoped to stop reading from that book." Outside, a Corsari pod thudded into a docking cradle. The station shifted, an old ship's cat flexing her spine. Saria's ears tracked the sound like arrows. "Tell me all of it," she said. "The parts polite people skip." He did not speak at first. He poured water, offered her a cup, poured his own, as if the ritual of hands and steam could protect what came next from breaking either of them. Then he spoke. Not a speech, not a justification. Facts braided to memory, numbers threaded with the siege song of a seaside town, how Tethys smelled when a lance broke, which ship he let burn because 3 others would live, the way his sister's letters arrived with sand in the fold because she insisted on writing from a beach. "I am afraid of you," Saria told him when he stopped. "I know," Kalen said, and his mouth trembled once in a small, indecorous human way. She set her cup down, precise. "I am also grateful to you." These truths lived beside each other like rival saints forced to share a shrine. He nodded. "I will move out if you want it." "No." The word snapped, sharper than she intended. She smoothed her fur with a palm. "This marriage is not a corridor one walks alone when it grows inconvenient. But you will not keep secrets from me again." "I will try." "You will not try," she said softly. "You will do." His eyes closed. When they opened, something in him had reshelved. "I will do." Outside the window, lightning braided claws through clouds the color of hungry bruises. Saria found she could breathe again. She did not forgive war for carving him. She did not forgive him for being good at what it asked. But she believed him when he said he aimed mercy like a weapon where he could. That belief tasted strange, like a human sweet. Too much sugar, and you get sick. Just enough, and you remember birthdays. "Tomorrow," she said, "we 10 prisoners." He blinked. "We?" "Your station," she said tartly. "Serves my people, too." For the first time since the alarms, his smile reached his eyes. "Yes, princess." Do not call me princess in this room, she snapped, then softened. Saria, or Fox. Fox, he repeated, tender as blasphemy. Understood. The Corsari smelled of tar and fear. Their armor was scaled in toughened resin. Their tattoos told stories in ink that shone when the light slanted. Saria moved among them with healers and security, translating between languages of wound and shame. A young Corsari, no beads yet grown into his braids, sat on a berth, eyes glassed. He clutched something ridiculous, a snapped, painted token of a shark on a string. My brother, he rasped when Kalen crouched. He was on the black knife. She fell. His voice broke in the middle and came back crooked. I called him cruel names when we were boys. They would be the last words I said. Kalen's throat worked. He did not offer the balm of lies. He offered water and listening. My father died, he said quietly, shocking Saria. She had not known that peace. I spoke to him as if there would be time to apologize later. There wasn't. The boy flinched. Then, an almost imperceptible slackness. He allowed a stranger's hand to hold his shame for a moment so he could breathe around it. After, in the corridor that tasted of disinfectant and ship metal, Saria touched the prince's sleeve. You could have made him small for attacking us, she said. You made him human. Corsari, Kalen corrected gently. Not human. Himself. Semantics, she snapped to hide the heat in her chest. Sometimes semantics is the blade that doesn't draw blood. They wrote policies that afternoon, lean and strict, but laced with decency, quarter given, medical prioritized, rations unflavored to insult no one's god. They addressed a crowd of stationers at shift change, work hands and cooks, pilots, a Vulpanari gardener still grieving the death of her universe of mint. We won, Kalen said. We will win better if we are kind. I require you to be better. You cannot require kindness. A human tech muttered, too loud for safety. No, Kalen said. But I can require behavior that looks like it until your heart remembers how. Laughter, grudging and real. Saria saw something she had never watched up close, how a prince can tilt an entire room without raising his voice, simply by showing them the world with his measurements. That night she found him asleep at the glass like a penitent, jacket thrown over a chair, boots off, socks ugly and striped. How unroyal, she thought, and her mouth quirked. His face slackened when he slept, not younger, exactly. Less armed. She fetched a blanket and considered how to place it without waking him. Vulpanari are not made for gentle, their claws snag. Still, she folded the wool, eased it across shoulders that had held too much. He stirred, murmured something in a dialect she did not know, the vowel cadence like surf. Go on, she whispered in her language. Sleep. I will watch. Her biolight, hiding in fur, thrummed for a second in a tone that meant home. It surprised her. She pretended it did not. 3 weeks after the Corsari, a delegation arrived with smiles sharp as scalpels, the trade compact of the outer barrows. They claimed neutrality, worshipped profit, and had a celebrated habit of arming both sides of a fight with equal enthusiasm. Their leader, Trias Val, wore navy silk and a scent engineered to mean trust across 7 species. Saria's nose wrinkled anyway. We congratulate you on decisive action, Trias said, spreading manicured hands. We propose reciprocal aid. We note, too, that Meridian's gardens are blighted. We own a subsidiary that can regrow them in a week. For a price, Saria murmured. Trias smiled, wounded. For a fee equal to the value we bring. Kalen listened, stone still. What would you require in return? A minor concession. Adjust the tariff on exchange lanes 14 through 17. And temporarily relax the inspection of shipments bound for the Armstrong Belt. Saria's ears flattened. You ask us to open our doors to smugglers. We ask you to avoid offending those pragmatic entrepreneurs who lubricate our economies. Lubricate, Saria repeated, syrup sweet. A word humans use when what they mean is bribe. Kalen's gaze did not leave Trias' face. We will not open lanes to weapons hidden in barrels of flour. His tone could have iced the sun. Trieste's lashes fluttered. Prince, you misread our intent. Ambassador, Kalen returned with equal courtesy. You misread my threshold. The negotiations stretched long and vicious, fought with thin smiles and footnotes. Saria parried with clan law, Kalen cut with interstellar statute. At the end, Trieste's perfume soured in the air. Very well, she said, scalded. We will grow your gardens at cost, with an option for future contracts. Posted to a public tender, Kalen said. Let the station vote. We don't govern a fief. They left in brittle elegance. Saria's tail fluffed. They will cause trouble. They always cause trouble. Kalen tapped a finger on the table. Why push now? Because someone promised them we would bend. Someone with banners to sell. His eyes went distant. Or someone who profits when our people bicker over mint instead of watching the border. She angled her ears at him in approval. You think like a fox when you want to. I have a fine teacher, he said. He looked at the garden view, a brown scar. I'd like to give our folk green again. We will, she said. We will coax it back with our own hands. They did. Stationers signed up in shifts. Children planted seedlings with dirty seriousness. Volpinari grandmothers hummed soil hymns that made seeds bold. Kalen knelt in stubborn dirt in an old tunic, sleeves shoved to elbows, the tendons in his forearms working as he broke packed soil like he was cracking a code. Saria laughed when a stray irrigation line drenched him. He turned his face to the water without flinching, as if rain were an old blessing come to bless him again. Do humans always coax life by drowning it first? She teased. Everything on Earth is trying to drown or burn or devour everything else, he said deadpan. We learned to make friends with water early. Death world, she murmured, remembering old propaganda. He shrugged wryly, unoffended. By evening, shoots trembled in damp rows. The station smelled like wet hope. Saria leaned against the rail, watching a toddler pat mud onto a plant with zeal. Kalen stood beside her, sunless light doing flattering things to cheekbones he did nothing to deserve. Trieste will bring us a counteroffer, he said. Something with a prettier poison. Let her, Saria said. We will teach our people to taste before they swallow. Teach them fast, he murmured, gaze slipping to the stars. Something else is moving. What? Her fur prickled. Patterns, he said, as if answering a different question. I feel them. She did not mock him. Volpinari trusted the instincts of hunters who had spent a lifetime reading wind and leaf. She, too, sometimes knew things before she could prove them. Then we prepare. She did not say for what. She did not need to. The messenger came as a ping at 2:13 station time, the hour Saria had learned humans called foul for how it sours the gut. Kalen woke as if pulled by a wire. The message carried a timestamp and those 3 delicious words bureaucrats love, eyes only. He put the file on the glass between them. From my sister, he said, and the room tilted because she had never heard his voice rap that word in light. Your sister. Ariadne Dorn, he said, not quite smiling. Engineer. Tends to build cities where people only see wilderness. Also tends to get in trouble for calling admirals cowards to their faces. Saria liked her immediately. Ariadne's hollow spun up, a woman with the same storm-gray gaze, hair roped back, grease on her cheek, sea wind in her voice even over an encrypted channel. CAE, she said without preamble. Stop pretending Meridian is a quiet ring. The Outer Barrows Compact is piping munitions to a group calling themselves the Pale Hand. They're human supremacists with the flair for martyrdom and a taste for Volpinari pelts as trophies. Their last manifesto mentions your fox by name. The room dropped 10 degrees. Saria's tail coiled around her thigh like a second hand to hold her steady. Ariadne continued quick and clipped. The compact's fingerprints don't show, of course not. But the timing of lane inspections and the escrow trails sing like gulls on garbage. Somebody in Meridian's administration is greasing the gates. I assume you have 3 suspects already? I have 2 names. Incoming packet. Destroy after reading, you pious bastard. Love you. Don't die. The hollow died. For a moment, the sound of distant air fans was the only noise. Pale hand, Surya said. The words tasted not like fear, but like old rage boiled down to salt. We executed 3 on the Armstrong Pier after they skinned a diplomat's aide for the sport of gods. This batch prefers bombs to knives, Kalen said, scanning the packet. Fewer nightmares. Or so they tell each other to make it pretty. He had, as Ariadne guessed, 3 suspects: a shipping clerk too suddenly wealthy, a station counselor who voted abstain whenever abstaining permitted cruelty, and a chef who bought twice as much ammonia as any kitchen could justify. The names in Ariadne's file overlap too. We do not go public, Surya said, controlling the tremble in her voice the way one controls the shake in a bow, by honoring it. Panic pulls triggers. We go precise, Kalen returned. We pull threads. Quietly. He looked up. She found, to her own surprise, that her fear did not look like "don't leave me." It looked like "don't cut the right rope and fall." Bring your best tracker, he said. You, she answered. You think like fog until you choose to think like ice. He arched a brow. That is either an insult or the highest compliment your people offer. Both, she said. Dress plain. Pale hand kills theater before it can clap. They went ghost in their own home. Surya wore maintenance gray and tucked her ears under a cap, a comical look she suffered without comment. Kalen dressed like a dockhand 1 pay grade above broke. They followed odor and behavior. The ammonia trails led to a vent shaft where a careful bomb would turn air into a weapon. Surya's biolight flared under her fur, a warning tone as old as caves. Back, she hissed. Wait. Kalen's fingers hovered over a junction. He did not touch it. His eyes traced the geometry like prayer. They nested a trip, see? No. Trust me. We trip it on our time, not theirs. Bring me a canister. The fire suppression kind. What for? Smoke. Humans, she muttered, but fetched it, because she understood smoke too. He flooded the shaft with it, slow. In the observation window of a side hatch, a silhouette jerked. The man wore a cheap filter mask. He coughed. He reached to check the bomb, impatient. He broke his own trip because the smoke had turned the mathematics of fear. Kalen moved. He did not go for the man with a soldier's brutality. He went with a farmer's necessity. A twist, a pin, a wrist locked. The man's knife clanged. Surya snarled, a sound born in the throat and perfected in war, and placed her claws carefully against the drummer of his pulse. His eyes rolled white. Why? She asked, voice soft enough to make the question a blade. He spat something about purity that would have bored her if it had not made her stomach reacid. Kalen's eyes did not flare. They simply went empty as winter. Names, he said. The man gave them. They were not the names Surya expected. They were worse. Trias Val? She breathed, not believing and believing. Or someone wearing her cologne, Kalen said. But yes, this is a trade war in a dress. They had a list, a bomb, and too little time. And at some hour tomorrow, the station would vote on who replanted their garden. The meeting convened in a chamber designed for civility, semicircle seating, acoustic panels tuned to cut the shriek from argument, a dais like the lip of a fountain. Surya's fur sat flat under a diplomatic tunic. Kalen's jacket was simple, his signet hidden. Trias Val wore pearl and carried the air of someone who believed she could buy gravity if the station turned it off. We move to vote, the counselor with the abstain habit declared. On accepting the compact's proposal to. Before the vote, Kalen said, and every head twisted because he had not raised his voice, only his authority. We would like to present evidence. Trias' smile did not slip. Evidence of what, Your Highness? That we are good neighbors? Of an attempted mass murder, Surya said conversationally. Hard to keep the mint alive if the lungs are ash. A murmur grew like mold, quick, ugly. Kalen flicked his wrist. The room dimmed. Holos flowed, the vent shaft, the bomb, the glow of a tripwire that only looked innocent. Then the face of the man they'd taken, eyes rabbit-wide, voice ragged. Names spilled, a ledger recited in panic. Triest's perfume sharpened. What a curious fiction, she said. The Concorde's prince resorts to theatrical fabrications. A shame. He was known for sterner virtues. Would you care, Kalen said mildly, to smell my hands? The line was so strange the room actually paused. He held up his palms. They smelled like ammonia and burned metal and the tang of fierce sweat that does not belong to the man whose hands you are smelling. Even humans could catch it. Someone gagged. Your supply ledgers, Saria continued pressing, show a purchase of pressure regulators unsuitable for garden lines. Your shipments skipped random inspection on days this counselor. She pointed, ears flat, chaired. The escrow trail wove through 6 shelves and ended in a florist's shop on deck 4. You picked a shop without cameras. You picked a shop that belongs to a woman whose wife died at Tethys Gate. You should not have done that. She hates you more than she loves bribes. The counselor blanched. Triest's smile finally cracked. You endanger a relationship with a key. You attempted to skin my wife in our sleep, Kalen said, and it was the my wife, not the skinning, that made his voice wild for a syllable. He folded it back into control. The relationship is already changed. Saria did not look at him because if she did her biolight would speak too loudly for a room that did not deserve what it would say. Guards, the abstaining counselor choked. Remove them. No, another counselor snapped, suddenly awake. Remove you. And impound the compact's ships until we know how deep they sank their hooks. Chaos wanted to hatch. Kalen killed it gently. We will not riot, he said, quiet and deadly. We will arrest. We will indict. We will argue in rooms built for argument. And then we will garden. The vote was a landslide. Triest left with a spine so straight it would have cut paper. She did not scream. She did not curse. Saria took this as a promise that the compact would lick their wounds in private and return with cleaner hands and sharper knives. In the corridor, as the crowd thinned into gossip nodes and relief vents, Saria stopped. Kalen nearly walked into her. She turned. Her hand rose of its own accord and landed on his jaw, thumb rough. Vulpinari affection is never tender at first pass. You said my wife? She murmured. He went very still. I did. Humans, she said. So eager to name. It is only worth the syllable if you live through more mornings to say it. I intend to. Then keep intending to. They stood too close in a public hall, and everyone saw, and no one interrupted. Gossip machines spun. Peace is a living thing. It eats gossip like sugar. That night, they cooked without fire alarms. He chopped. She salted. They argued about whether onions deserved poetry. They ate sitting on the counter like children stealing fruit. Later, he woke from a dream that tasted of broken glass. She, already awake, the way foxkind often are, touched the back of his neck with her claws just enough to remind Muscle it was not alone. Tell me, she said into his hair. Tethys, he said. Always Tethys. Then we will learn to sing over it, she said. Loud enough, and you will hear 2 songs at once. Months billowed and thinned. Peace held ragged but held. The Corsari sued for an apology they did not deserve. Kalen offered them a procedure instead. The Outer Barrows Compact returned with lawyers who smelled like wax and new coats of moral paint. Meridian's gardens grew back, and with them small rituals. A weekly market where a Vulpinari spice seller flirted with an elderly human butcher over cuts of meat neither of them intended to buy. A dance on Deck 5 where youth learned each other like maps you might get lost in on purpose. On a windless morning, a courier from Earth arrived in a ship that flew like a rumor. Kalen took the message in the privacy of their glass. He returned with the look of a man who has accepted a wound in advance. What do they ask? Surya said, already disliking the word they. There's a string of raids along the frontier. He did not wrap it. Smugglers who call themselves the Kraken Crown. They take colony children for ransom. They burn stockpiles and leave poems about devouring empires. Poems, she snarled. They want me to take a task force and cut the crown off at the wrist. You said no, she said, making it not a question so she could be angrier when he admitted the opposite. I told them I have a job. He exhaled. But they're asking me because the timing is wicked and the crown is messy, and someone must take a blade to their networks. You said no, she repeated, quieter, dangerously. I did. He rubbed the bridge of his nose, suddenly tired. But if they cannot kill it, they will keep asking. And if no one kills it, children keep disappearing into nets and fires. You cannot carry every child, she hissed. I know. He looked at her, and there was no pose in him, nothing princely. But some weeks, I can carry a few. She sat in the bruising fact of it. She loved him, which meant she wanted him to never go to war again. She loved him, which meant she wanted him to stop monsters other people did not have the hands or stomach to stop. Both loves could not have everything they wanted. We will write the plan, she said at last, ears canted in surrender that was not surrender. If we write it, you return from it. Fox, he said, with a devastation of gratitude. We. They summoned Ariadne by secure line. She appeared in the hollow eating bread, chewing like the ocean. You'll need honey to catch those bastards, she said cheerfully. And a net that only closes when you sing to it. Explain, Kalen said. Backdoor the escrow, Ariadne said, eyes bright. Rebrand your task force as freight. Bait the lanes with something the crown wants. Offer them a corridor through Meridian where, oh look, we happen to have jurisdiction and a prince who keeps knives under his robes. Surya snorted. He keeps them under his bones. Even better, Ariadne said. Make sure your bait stinks right to them. Children? Surya said, low and lethal. No, Ariadne growled, suddenly all dorn under her sea salt. No, we do not use children as bait. We use something richer, perishable governance. Fake voting records. Fake blackmail. They love those. And we lace it with a tracker that prays in a language their scrubs don't know. They built a trap. They built it patiently, because patient traps insult predators into arrogant mistakes. Kalen learned the new lanes like lullabies. Surya learned the crown's slang like curses she might one day need to spit back. They argued about whose ships to use. They argued about the ethics of entrapment in sentences that would make philosophers blush for their blandness. On the eve of launch, Kalen stood in an equipment bay, helmet under his arm, the curve of the visor reflecting a fox whose fur was lit like embers. This is the last time, Surya said, lying to both of them, and knowing he knew. This is the last time until the next time, he corrected, a court jester of his own doom. Come back, she said. I will. You cannot promise. I will try with unseemly arrogance, he said. Which is the closest humans get to promise. She kissed him then, not the light politic brush of ceremony, not the chaste cheek of truce. She kissed him to write something on his mouth so that when he spoke orders they would carry the taste of home. He startled, not because he disliked it, but because he had not expected her to use her teeth exactly there. Fox, he said, wrecked. Go, she said. Before I claw your legs and make you limp in front of your crew. He went. She watched him go. She kept watching until the ship was a speck. Then she turned to the work of holding the hearth. The station hummed, innocent as a knife in its sheath. Somewhere in the outer barrows, Trieste Val watered a new breed of garden. Somewhere on the frontier, the Kraken crowns sang poems to their knives. The trap did not spring clean. It threaded, held, then shuddered. The crown came in two streams instead of one to nibble, one to test the line for poison. Kalen let the tester slice the bait and take a taste. His patience was a practiced cruelty. When the tester's data well spat nonsense in person, the crown laughed. Oh, the hubris of men who think they are the only clever beasts, and bit deeper with the other hand. That hand met a closed fist. Meridian's borrowed freighters cracked their skins like eggs. Inside were not votes and compromat but fast boats and fighters configured for drift-choke war. Kalen did not command from the rear. He flew lead like a stubborn myth. He should not have. Princes belong in pretty cages at the center of ships. He never had the habit for cages. The Crown's flagship, the Medusa Joy, a name only a poet could love, angled to cut him. He let her, because arrogance arrives late to its own wake. When she opened her maw, he slid not into it but along the fringe, where the teeth were weakest and proudest. He found the artery the way a hunter finds a spring under sand and tapped it with a sliver weapon that made machines doubt their orders. The Joy lived up to half her name. Her crew screamed euphoric nonsense as systems failed, and every light became a god. Kalen's wingwoman sang in his ear. "You corked her, crown killer. Don't crown me," he snapped. "Not yet. Count our dead." "None," she breathed awed. "Keep it that way." His hands moved. Hands carry memory longer than minds. His knew this math, this music. They were not proud of knowing. They were precise. Back on Meridian, Saria ran 2 wars. The public one, smiling at markets so children wouldn't smell her fear, and the hidden one, chasing the last pale hand rat through ducts that stank of coolant and cheap courage. She cornered him above a bakery. He swung a blade and nicked the air by her cheek. She did not reach for steel. She used the body her gods gave her, went low, swept him with the lever of her tail, pinned his wrist with a knee. He spat. "Animal," in a tone he thought hurt. "We are all animals," she said, and cuffed him with a restraint that clicked like a punctuation mark. "Some of us learn to be more." Ariadne's packet hit the station a beat later, a vector change, 2 Crown auxiliaries skidding toward Meridian in a Fury's blind sprint. Saria took the call in the passage between Bakesense and Blood. "Fox," Ariadne said, "tell your prince to close his hand faster." "Consider it told," Saria said, already dialing heat lines with one claw. "And tell him from me that if he breaks, I break the parts of him the crown doesn't touch." "You too," Ariadne muttered fondly, "are going to either save the galaxy or exhaust it into a nap." On the Joy's corpse, Kalen stood in a corridor that smelled of panicked men, metal, and illicit perfume. He removed his helmet. He ordered triage for the enemy before trophies, the way a good ghost does. Then he felt it, a tug in his chest, a snag at the edge of the weft. Meridian. 2 ships. An angle he did not like. He reached across space and set a tone on the station band his people would feel like an itch at the back of the teeth. "Sure," he said. "Sure, brace. 2 rocks incoming." Saria felt the itch and bared her teeth in a smile no human in history had wanted pointed at them. "Brace," she crooned to her station. "Show them what we grew under the mint." She cut power to 3, decorative, skylights. Panels fell. 4 cannons bloomed from behind mosaics of a dragon that human children loved to pretend to feed. The ships did not expect teeth behind a toy. They never did. Saria's paws found controls as if she had been born to this seat. She was not. But she had watched Kalen's hands enough to learn a grammar. The first auxiliary took a flower of fire in the engine and went gentle. The second, angrier, tried to ram. So old, so stupid, so satisfying to defeat. Saria vented an entire ring of atmosphere in a stutter, tripping the ship's angle into a slide. It kissed the hull, scraped, whined like a spoiled god, and drifted off with no thrusters and a hull full of offended. "You have a talent," Ariadne said in her ear, laughter bright. "My mother taught me to dance," Saria said, breathless. She did not say with whom. After the quiet. After the inventories, the angry letters, the copper taste of almost. Kalen sent a message that said only, "Alive. Returning." And she, fox that she was, pressed her face into their couch and let tears soak into ugly upholstery because every once in a while a princess is allowed to stop being myth enough to be mammal. She did not tell him that part. Not yet. He would learn it by scent when he returned. He always did.